Hello, I'm Brian Bush from the Marlowe team, and I'm going to be speaking a little bit about installing the Marlowe command line interface and some of the other tools that we'll be using in the lecture segments about Marlowe CLI. There are a couple of prerequisites. Most of these are very common core utilities or commonly used programs on Linux systems and related operating systems. So we have a list of them here. These actually come automatically installed in the procedure that I'm showing you. But if you're going to do something very manual and custom, you will need to have these tools if you want to follow along with the lectures. First thing is Daedalus. We have a special version of the Daedalus wallet for use on the Marlowe Pioneers test network. And in the Marlowe Pioneers website, we have information and links on where to download the different versions of this. So this is a special version of Daedalus that works on the Marlowe Pioneers network. It's very easy to install this. You basically download the executable, run the installer, and then you can launch it, and you have a special Daedalus there. And it will coexist with any other Daedalus you have installed on your system. So once you've created or installed Daedalus, you probably want to create a wallet. There are commands there in Daedalus to add a wallet, create, you give it a nickname and a password. It will display a seed phrase. Keep a record of that, write it down. And you can also reuse seed phrases from, if you've used Marlowe Run, for instance. One thing not to do is never use a seed phrase that you've created for the actual public mainnet, or even the public testnet for that matter, in these Marlowe Pioneers test network. You really want to maintain the security of your seed phrase. So use all the best practices on protecting seed phrases if you're using them on real networks. You can be a little casual on this test network, but it's actually good to just be really careful protecting seed phrases. You can fund your wallet. We have instructions in the Marlowe Pioneers course how to do this, but basically you're running a command called curl that will fund the wallet. You grab the address from Daedalus where it says receive funds, and then basically type it in here at the command line in blue, and then you will receive some test ADA on our Marlowe test network. So installing the CLI itself, if you've installed Daedalus and you're using Linux or Mac, it's actually trivial because in the Daedalus menu, you have a special menu item here called Open a Marlowe Terminal. And this basically, once you do that, you get a standard terminal. The look of the terminal will actually depend on how you have your system set up, either in Linux or Mac, and terminal choices and things like that. But the bottom line is you get a terminal that already has Marlowe CLI installed. It has all the other tools I mentioned before installed. It has Cardano CLI and some other things like that. So it's basically the easiest way to get going on these things. And once again, we have help on the Marlowe Discord and other places on getting this all working, because I know sometimes installing things can be the biggest struggle when you're getting started with something. Now, if you want to actually not use Daedalus, or if you're going to be doing a lot of development, you may want to consider installing the Marlowe CLI tools via Nix. So there's, once again, Plutus community documentation on this. We have help available. The bottom line is that there's a well-trodden procedure for doing this. It takes a little bit of time. So I would basically only do that if you really are going to be investing and doing some development with Marlowe. And there are various warnings and alerts, like setting up binary caches for Nix will greatly speed up the build time. So you need to kind of read the instructions carefully. But once you've got those kind of set up on Nix, you can clone the Marlowe Cardano repository. So here's the URL. You may have visited this already. It basically has all the Marlowe information, source code, scripts, documentation that relate to use of Marlowe on the Cardano blockchain. And the git command is just a basic git command where you just clone the git repository. It takes a little bit of time because there's some data there. And then once you have that, you go into a Nix shell. And then once you're in the Nix shell, you can do just some quick checks. So here we'll see what version of Marlowe has been installed. And we'll see that we have Cardano CLI, which is handy, and that we have the Cardano Wallet CLI installed. So here we've got, kind of a verification that we're in good shape. And you can run these same commands using the Daedalus method. So one thing we're going to be doing in some of the other lecture segments is running transactions. So we need to be able to use keys from the command line. So if you have Daedalus, you can do transactions, but that's within the Daedalus user interface. We also want to do that from the command line, so we need some keys at the command line. So you could take, for instance, when you created your wallet on the Daedalus for Marlowe Pioneers, you could take that seed phrase, and here I've got it typed in. Obviously, you shouldn't share these seed phrases with people except for demos like this. And then there are a couple commands that basically take that seed phrase and they generate actual signing and verification keys from that. And so this uses the Cardano Wallet tool and the Cardano CLI tool. And once again, there's lots of community documentation on stuff like this, but we've written it out here to kind of make it easy for people. So when you run these commands, basically it's converting the seed phrase into a root private key, and then it's deriving child keys from that, and then it's computing the verification key and then the address. So we've done all that. We can look to see they're there. There are these small files. We have basically the signing key file and the verification key file. And then the address, we've computed that, and you can see this address. So you could go on the special Explorer that's custom for the Marlowe private Pioneers test network, and you could look at like transactions at that address. But right now, at this point, we don't have any funds in this wallet, so we are going to do that curl command. And so here we will fund the wallet. And so you get a response right away. It says it succeeded. It gave us, I think, 10 or 1,000 ADA, which is like 1 billion Lovelace or something. And then there was a little fee and gave us a transaction ID. So once again, we could go look on the Blockchain Explorer and see that. Now this transaction has been submitted. And so on the testnet, it could take seconds, dozens of seconds, maybe even a minute or so for the transaction to be confirmed, but it will get confirmed. You just have to be a little patient. The other thing about using the private testnet or just any network for Cardano is there is a node socket that you interact with. And so you need to find where that node socket is, make sure it's all wired up into your scripts. Here we're using a Linux system, and we're actually just going to use the node socket that is there with Daedalus. We'll also set the magic number for the testnet, which happens to be 1567. And then we should see that we can actually communicate with the nodes. So here's a query. We can see when we query, there's a whole bunch of UTXOs at the node that are discovered by Marlowe CLI. And then similarly, let's check that Cardano CLI can actually see the transactions. So looks like everything's working. We've got a procedure to kind of get a node up and running, get a wallet, and then create some keys. And verify that the tools are working. So troubleshooting, there is a Discord channel, as I mentioned. That's really the best place to check in if you're having trouble with installation. And of course, there are resources for this. General installation instructions for Marlowe. There's the Plutus community documentation, which is really great in terms of detail. General NICS information, and then the documentation for the Marlowe CLI tool. So what we've seen here is that there's a special version of Daedalus that gives you all the Marlowe tools you need. If you don't want to use that, you can also install via NICS and you get the same tools. And you need a node running if you're going to be interacting with Marlowe. And then, of course, you need to create some keys and fund those. So that's kind of the basics of installing Marlowe CLI. Thank you.